Greetings everyone, and welcome to another timey-wimey Tuesday Doctor Who update. This time around, I finally picked up a few more additions to the Target Books collection. Yes, as you know, I've been slowly, can you see these? Yeah, you can kind of see them. I'm slowly pulling together the collection of Target Books novelizations of the classic series. I've got all of the First Doctor, about half of the Second Doctor, a chunk of the Third and Fourth, most of the Fifth, about half of the Sixth, half of the Seventh. Yeah, I've got a lot of gaps to fill, is the point there. But yeah, some of you might recall a story that I've told many times over the years. Of back in the 90s, I had a box of books and comics and audiobooks, and well, that box went missing during a move, and I lost like a whole bunch of stuff from my collection. Amongst those things were my Target books. Yeah, now I didn't have anywhere near a complete collection. I've actually got way more now than I ever had then. But I've always wanted to reacquire the specific editions I had. So that's part of what today's update is I got a couple of those back in the collection for the first time in literally 30 years. So pretty excited about that. In addition to those, I also got some of the more recent novelizations of classic stories, some of which had never been novelized before. So kind of cool to finally have those gaps in the collection complete, and really for the first time ever, because those gaps had never been filled before, other than, you know, there were some fan novelizations and such. Anyway, enough preamble, let's get to the update. Doctor Who Target novelizations today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. So those of you who know my sort of history of discovering Doctor Who and kind of learning about it over the years in those glorious early days will know that one of my first exposures to Doctor Who was a photo of the Cybermen in a book about robots that I got. If you go back and watch my video, Journey of a Whovian from 2013, it was a video I did for the 50th anniversary, I go into considerable detail about that. So, needless to say, I'd always been curious about the Cybermen. I hadn't really seen them in the show other than Revenge of the Cybermen, and I don't think Earthshock had even come out yet. So, I wanted to learn more about them, and in particular the earlier adventures. So, the 60s episodes just weren't available in my area in any form at the time. They hadn't come to PBS where I lived at the time yet, so I hadn't seen any. There was no way to experience those stories other than the novelizations. So I took a look at what was available and grabbed what I thought was the first Cyberman story, going solely by the title. We have Doctor Who and the Cybermen, which is not the first Cyberman story. It's actually the second one. This was based on the Moonbase, and the novelization's written by Jerry Davis, which is great because he was one of the original authors. Yeah, Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, creators of the Cybermen, actually wrote the first three Cybermen stories, the 10th Planet, the Moonbase, and the Tomb of the Cybermen. So pretty cool that I got, you know, a novelization by one of the original creators. And it actually does have a prologue that tells you all about the creation of the Cybermen. So even though this was not the first Cyberman story, it at least gave me more information about their origins. And then we get into that wonderful Base Under Siege story, the Moonbase. I should mention also, this is one of those ones that has a lot of illustrations in it as well. Not all of the novelizations had that, but some of the ones from, I guess from the 70s, I think, did. And it was wonderful. So it kind of gives you an idea of what the story might have been like visually. So it wasn't until years later that I actually saw the story, and I think it was actually when it was incomplete. As a matter of fact, yeah, it's right here. We have Cybermen The early years. Yeah, this is one of the famous years tapes that came out in the 90s. So this contained episodes 2 and 4 of the Moonbase. And of course, I immediately recognized it as this. So actually, this is kind of interesting. So why don't I give you a little peek at the cover there. So hosted by Dr. Number 6 himself, Colin Baker, it serves as a sort of time capsule, the early history of the Cybermen, at the time presenting a lot of orphaned episodes from early stories that either hadn't been recovered yet, or had yet to be given the animated treatment, because of course back in the 90s they hadn't started doing the animated reconstructions yet. But then of course with the DVD release of the Moonbase, they animated the 2 missing episodes. It was one of the earlier ones they did, actually, and we could finally see it complete for the first time. Give you a look at the back there as well, and you can kind of see what the contents are. So as you can see, we have a selection of clips which present sort of key moments in the history of the Cybermen, such as their first appearance from the 10th Planet Episode 1, their first words in Episode 2, and we have some clips from Tomb of the Cybermen and The Invasion. I think this is around the same time they discovered Tomb of the Cybermen for the first time. Yeah, 1992, because I remember picking that up on VHS as well. And then we got 4 full episodes, including the 2 existing episodes of the Moonbase and the 2 existing episodes of the Wheel in Space. But that was a few years later, so until that came out, this was my only experience with the Moonbase story, and honestly I loved it. I thought it was a great, tense, suspenseful story, so it was quite a thrill when I was finally able to see at least some of it on this years tape, and then, well, years later, seeing the complete version with the 2 missing episodes animated. So, great stuff, but, not the first Cyberman story as I initially thought. So let me just give you a quick look at the cover here, and you can see. So this, of course, is an 80s edition, which you can tell by the neon tubing logo on there, with a wonderful painted cover by Andrew Skilleter. And I absolutely love it. So I wanted to get that specific edition because that's the specific edition that I had back in the day. But as I was replacing titles from the collection, I did pick up an earlier edition of Doctor Who and the Cybermen. I forgot I had this. So this has the old diamond logo, so you can tell that it's an earlier one. And let me just pop this up here as well, and you can see. You can take a look at that cover too, just for the sake of comparison. So I think that particular cover is done by Chris Achilleos, who was quite a prolific Doctor Who artist who did a lot of the artwork for the earlier novelizations. And actually a lot of the more recent novelizations kind of mimic his style, which is pretty interesting. And there we go. So that's Doctor Who and the Cybermen doubly represented. So, I mean, it's neat to have both editions for the different covers, but this is the one that's definitely more nostalgic for me. Now, by a similar token, my introduction to the third Doctor, again, before those episodes aired in my area, at the time when I was watching Doctor Who, when I got this particular book, only the Tom Baker episodes were being shown, and then I think they went forward from there to show the Peter Davison ones on the weekends as omnibus movies. And then, a year or 2 later, they finally started showing some of the older ones. They brought the John Pertwee episodes over again, and I was able to see them for the first time. But until then, much like the first and second Doctor's adventures, the only way I could experience the third Doctor's adventures was through the novelizations. So, I picked up this one, Doctor Who and the Auton Invasion. Now, again, different title from the televised story. The televised story is called Spearhead from Space. So I had no idea of any of that. In fact, I don't think I even knew that this was the third Doctor's premiere adventure, like his first adventure. I just bought it because I thought the space squid on the cover looked cool. Again, wonderful cover by Andrew Skilleter. Why don't we take a closer look at that as well, and you can see it in all its spooky space squid glory. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Spooky space squid. And I should say that this one, again, also has illustrations There we go. I'm pretty sure you can find scans of all these illustrations online. I'm not going to go all out for it, but yeah, pretty neat. So this particular one is written by Terrance Dicks, probably one of the single most prolific authors ever in the history of classic Doctor Who. He was also the story editor for the show for a while and wrote quite a few scripts for the show. So, very cool. But I always really liked this one a lot. I read the novel, I think, a couple of times and just really enjoyed it as a story. And again, it was quite some time before I saw the televised version. So when I did, it was interesting because having, and same with the Cybermen, the Moonbase adaptation, both of these stories kind of lived in my head as novels, and I kind of visualized them a certain way. So when I finally saw the actual televised version, it was interesting to me to see how much was close to how I imagined it and how much was different, you know, and sort of remembering the verbal descriptions of certain actions and then seeing those things played out on screen visually, but almost hearing the descriptions in my head because I was so familiar with the novels. So interesting way to experience those stories for the first time. So next up, this is actually a new novelization of a Fourth Doctor story. We have Warrior's Gate and Beyond. Now, before we take a look at this, I just wanted to point out that I do actually have the original novelization of Warrior's Gate. The original novelization was written by John Lydecker, but I think the author, Steve Gallagher was the author of the original story, and this new novelization is actually by Steve Gallagher himself. So just for the sake of comparison, we'll take a look at the covers here. So here, I believe this is another Andrew Skilleter cover, actually, and it's quite a lovely painted cover, as you can see. Very nice. I love these painted covers. They're just so beautiful. So much better than some of the lazy photo covers that they use during a lot of the Fifth Doctor's adventures, for example. Just literally using a screenshot from the show for the cover. Like, wow, put in a lot of effort there, guys. But I love when they would do actual proper custom artwork like this. I mean, that's a beautiful cover. I love it. So for Warrior's Gate and Beyond, I'll just show you the cover first, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what exactly this is. So take a look at that, and there you go. You can see they're kind of mimicking the Chris Achilleos style again. And we once again have the glorious return of the Diamond logo with the 60th anniversary and Ncuti Gatwa era version. Quite nice. So, couple things about this. First off, it's a brand new adaptation of Warrior's Gate by the original author. So taking a quick skim through both and just doing a bit of comparing, there are some passages that just appear to be almost exactly the same as this, and there's others that are quite different indeed. But the general consensus is this is just generally a more thorough adaptation and a little bit truer to sort of the nuances of the original story because it's by the original author. I've always said, like, you know, if you can get the original author to novelize his own screenplay, do it, because you're going to get so much more out of it because he's so much more intimately familiar with those characters and situations, right? But the and beyond part is interesting because we don't just have the novelization of the story, but we actually have a couple of short stories that take place after the events of Warrior's Gate and kind of tell us what happened to some of the characters after the fact, such as Romana and K9 and the Therals and stuff like that. So there we go. So we have the Kairos Ring and the Little Book of Fate. So two additional short stories that tie into Warrior's Gate, again by the original author. So very cool, very neat idea there. So obviously I had to pick that up. Plus I've always just really liked the story of Warrior's Gate. It's a very like almost surreal kind of story about you know, traveling to different dimensions and stuff like that. And it was the culmination of the E-Space trilogy, which originally comprised Full Circle, State of Decay, and concluded with Warrior's Gate. So it was where the TARDIS had slipped into a parallel universe, essentially, and got stuck there for several stories. So the Therals, who were a race of cat people, kind of like the Thundercats, but they were able to navigate the gates between dimensions, so they were able to help the TARDIS get out. So next up, we have a pair of adaptations that have been a long time coming. For whatever reason, the original author of this story just would not authorize it to be novelized. Until finally, a couple of years ago, he novelized them himself. And we finally have them. What are they? Resurrection of the Daleks by Eric Saward. The 5th Doctor Dalek adventure from season 21, which is a great Dalek story, by the way. I really like Eric Saward's writing and his you know, the stories that he contributed to Doctor. He was the story editor for a couple seasons as well. I just love the sort of dark edge that he gives to these stories, in particular the Dalek stories, which, you know, if you get down to the nitty-gritty of them, have the potential to be quite horrific, especially with the genetic mutation aspect and so forth, and just the ruthlessness of the Daleks as you know, a race of aliens just want to kill everybody. But we'll just take a quick peek at the cover there. So quite nice to have this after so long, because it's been a long-standing gap in the Target Books range, because it just never got adapted, and for whatever reason he just refused to give permission. I don't know what the whole story is there, but I'm glad that he finally you know, softened, I guess, on it, and just, you know, adapted it himself again. You know, get the original author to adapt his own work. So that's one of them. But that's not the only one, because Eric did another story, this time for good old 60. We have Revelation of the Daleks. So again, this has been not adapted for the longest time until now. So finally, we have, I think, every story between this and all the Douglas Adams ones that came out a few years ago. We finally have novelizations of every single classic Doctor Who story. These two have been very conspicuous gaps. In fact, they were unadapted for so long that there were fans who did their own novelizations and just made them available for free to fans. So never underestimate the fans. If you don't give us what you want, we'll make it our own damn selves. So give you a quick look at the cover there. So as you can see, these are both the newer style Target books. They've kind of brought them back as an imprint of BBC Books. Target isn't its own company anymore. They're long gone. But yeah, pretty neat. I love that they're doing these, and they've actually been reprinting a lot of the older books as well, which is terrific. So you can get nice new editions of some of the older books. I think I have another one here somewhere. Yes. And the same thing. So I have this, the Web of Fear, right? It was second Doctor story. And then I also got this edition a while back, which is the one that I used to have, again with the lovely Andrew Skilleter cover. So this is the reprint with the old Chris Achilleos artwork on it, and this is the version that I used to have that went missing in that box. Anyway, that is not it. There's one more, because a very interesting adaptation came out very recently. And I should mention, it was one of the later adaptations originally. We have Evil of the Daleks. This is not the one that I got recently, though. I've had this one for a little while. This was difficult to acquire because this had a fairly low print run, and I was just lucky to get a good deal on it at one point. So this is the wonderful, thorough, meaty adaptation by John Peel. He also adapted Power of the Daleks. Just to be complete, I also have that. I've talked about these before. But recently, we got another pass at Evil of the Daleks, written by Jamie himself, Frazer Hines. How cool is that? So the idea is, it's when Zoe first joins the TARDIS team, and the doctor's telling her about, some of the dangers that she might face, and he asks her, have you ever heard of the Daleks? And originally, that's just kind of where the Wheel in Space ends, and like we all kind of, it's just like a sly wink to the audience, like, oh yeah, he's going to tell her about the Daleks, and she's going to be scared and stuff. So this actually kind of picks up where that leaves off. So the Dalek story that they tell Zoe is the story of Evil of the Daleks. But here's the interesting thing about this. This isn't just a straight up adaptation of Evil of the Daleks. It's Evil of the Daleks as seen through the eyes primarily of Jamie. Because, the doctor's telling the story, and at one point Jamie cuts in and he's like, "Aye, you're not telling it right." So he takes over the storytelling, and, the doctor kind of takes a back seat while Jamie continues to tell Zoe about how it all went down. And so we get a lot of Jamie's perspective on that particular adventure, and it's just a really fun idea. So I thought, yeah, that sounds great. And I mean, anything with Frazer Hines. I mean, Jamie was one of the all-time great companions, right? So this is too big to fit here, but I'll just hold it up so you can get a look at the cover. Yeah, it's quite nice. A very classy hardcover. But yeah, I heard about this. I thought, wow, what a great idea! Like, sort of revisit this familiar story from a fresh perspective. Yeah, so there you go. Kind of a fun idea, and couldn't resist grabbing that one, even though I have the other novelization. And that is it for this this update. So some nice additions to the Target Books collection. Pretty happy with that. Great to get a couple more of those long lost editions back in the collection as well. There's still a few I need to track down, but I think I've got most of them by now, which is good. Feels good to finally get those back after they've been missing for so long. There's still quite a lot of stuff from that box that I have not recovered and possibly never will. But, it's nice at least to be filling in the gaps of the Doctor Who collection again and kind of rebuilding the older titles back to their former glory. Alrighty, well that is it from me to you for now. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Until then, thanks for watching, and sayonara.